I had the fortune of making my first hole in one while playing with Bill, and he gave me a
Wow.
big hug. And I think we opened up the bar tab that night, and it was a good time.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Golf and Politics. And I know for a fact that many of our listeners are total golf architecture nerds. And so, do we have a program for you tonight? Rob, before we get into our guests and start introducing him and talking with him about golf course architecture, even though today was a day from hell for work, for everybody across America, everybody's been off work for weeks with the holidays. It's always a pain in the ass to come back to the office right after New Year. So today's always crazy, but you know what? I kept a big smile on my face all day because last night was freaking awesome. And I just want to get your thoughts. Were you pretty much doubting and cussing everything when Baltimore had the game-winning field goal, or did you keep the faith?
Well, when they had the game-winning field goal, I was like, shit. I assumed it was over. I didn't think it was over the entire game because we started moving the ball, especially in the second half. And Aaron was in a rhythm, and Baltimore started losing Kyle Hamilton and some other key players in the secondary. So I thought as long as they could, keep doing what they were doing, if we got the ball last, we were going to win. And then when Baltimore scored and left us like that much time, I was like, we're going to win this thing. And then I was worried we might have scored a little bit too fast. But what a game. I mean,
Yeah.
if for anything else, Aaron Rodgers really made all of us 41-year-olds really proud because he was a baller last night. Some of those throws were
He can absolutely still
elite.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely elite.
No receivers. Let's be honest. Like, we had receivers out there that couldn't make teams that didn't make the playoffs and are getting all the reps last time. I mean, we nobody to throw it to practically. I was glad we found Freiermuth a lot last night. That was helpful.
Yeah, Freiermuth stepped up because, having Darnell Washington out too hurt.
Yeah.
Not as much as having DK Metcalf out, but having Darnell Washington hurt because he's made a lot of those third down conversions that have kept drives going. The whole key to the Steelers' success is third down conversions. Keeping drives going, keeping the defense off the field, keeping them fresh. And Pat Freiermuth stepped up. Calvin Austin III stepped up. Valdez Scanlon stepped up. The offensive line played fantastic. I mean, that was an off
for West Virginia University, dominating at center.
He's great. Otanu's great. So, I mean, really, I think the offense won that game more than anything. The defense was just.
Well, I will tell you this. There was one player on defense that cost us. That was Jalen Ramsey. I don't know what he was doing. Is it 3 times he was lost in space and gave them 3 touchdowns? I mean, it was just, he's a Hall of Famer. You gotta be better than that. I know you're getting older and losing a step, but come on.
Well,
know what coverage you're in and cover your guy.
I don't think that was, there are times where you could say it's age, but I don't even think those mistakes were age because if he was just that slow, they would have thrown 64-yard touchdown passes the whole game.
Right.
And, so those were blown coverages. There's no reason. I know Zay Flowers is a terrific player, but there is no reason to be that open 3 times.
That's because you're a terrific player. You should never be that open. Everybody should know where he's at all times.
So I think that's a fixable mistake, and I think the coverage will be better by next week. DK Metcalf has a lot to prove. He's got a lot to make up for, and he better show up against the Texans and make up for. He almost cost us the season with his.
No question. Well, my wife said, well, Matt, you don't get this excited about Steelers games every week. What's going on? I'm like, babe, we made the playoffs. It was like a playoff game tonight. And if in case you haven't noticed, we've had 10 years of mediocrity. So allow me to celebrate tonight. She was mad because we woke up my 7-year-old.
The other thing too is it was against the Ravens. We would have been excited if it was against anybody else, but this is like Ohio State beating Michigan. It's always a championship game. It matters, and it was just a blast. I enjoyed. I mean, you couldn't even make up that second half.
Yeah, best rivalry in the NFL, no question about it. But let's get into our guest here tonight. Colton Craig is our guest. He's a golf course architect and partner at SCC Golf Design, one of the most respected firms in the industry. He's raised in Oklahoma. Colton grew up caddying at Southern Hills, working on the maintenance crew at Southern Hills. That shaped a lot of his hands-on minimalist design philosophy. He studied landscape architecture at the Oklahoma State University, earned a prestigious World 100 Club Fellowship, and has worked on projects across the U.S. and abroad. Colton, welcome to the program. We love to talk
Exactly.
golf course architecture, so this is a joy for us.
Hey, just to go back, thanks guys. Yeah, this is great. And it's really cool what you guys are doing, kind of the red and blue meets golf podcast. I think we need more of that, and I think you guys are totally ahead of the curve here. But to go back to the football game last night, so I'm a little bit of a Steelers fan myself, but it was also last night was my wife and I's anniversary.
Congratulations.
So we when they got in field, whenever I was that last 5 minutes of that game was absolutely insane. We were at a restaurant and like I couldn't take my eyes off of it, and that's not what I should have been doing that night, right? And once the Ravens got back in field goal range, right there at the end of the game, we left. So I didn't even know till this morning that he had missed the field goal. So
Wow.
I thought it was over.
Yeah. I thought it was over too. I was angry. I thought for sure we had lost. So.
Yes. Yeah. Tulsa's like, if Tulsa has an NFL team, it's kind of the Steelers. If you're not a Cowboys or Chiefs fan.
Yeah.
It's with can be.
We've got fans.
So what's the name of the random bar you said that's a? Because I'm fairly new to Tulsa. I've lived here for 4 years, so I haven't discovered the Steelers bar yet.
I think it's in Bixby.
Well, that's probably why I try to never go to Bixby.
Yeah.
Bixby's not a bad place. It just takes forever to get down there. So I
It's
try
out toward Bixby. I don't know, man. If you would ask me any other day where it wasn't after sunset, I could probably tell you. But every Sunday, it's packed with black and yellow.
I'll have to check it out sometime. Well, you grew up in Tulsa and you started drawing. My understanding is you started drawing golf courses as a kid. What
Yeah.
first drew you to golf course design rather than maybe chasing competitive golf?
Well, I never really played the game of golf competitively. I was very much entrenched in the wrestling community, which is the total opposite of golf, right? Like golf is like kind of you're against yourself and against nature, where wrestling is like on a very dimensional, flat plane against another person, right? So it's a totally different concept. I played football. I just had too much energy and maybe not enough patience to be competitive in the game of golf. But yeah, I guess my interest in design is comes from, in design of golf courses comes from in the Midwest. A lot of family vacations are road trips, right? And along the road, we would stop at those classic little go-kart / arcade / putt-putt places, right? That was a lot of times where we'd stop. And I love the putt-putt courses. And, when we'd get back to the hotel at the end of the day, I would be drawing them on the little notepad that they had in the hotel. I would draw my little, not, that was probably age 4 or 5, which obviously as I matured, that concept matured, and going to work at Southern Hills and going to school at Oklahoma State, then working on some construction crews is kind of how I really kind of developed and got my foot in the industry, if you will. And so, yeah, I guess in a roundabout weird way, you could say it's the roadside putt-putt courses was my initial draw to why I started drawing so young. And I'm very fortunate to have like supportive parents that fostered and recognized that passion and, didn't tell me just to, go get a real job.
That's great. Well, I mean, talk about working on the maintenance crews, working as a caddy at a course like Southern Hills. How did that really start to shape your understanding of golf design and operational perspective? Like, did the wheels just start turning as how old were you to start caddying? Were you a teenager or?
Yeah, it was high school. It was high school.
So, I mean, did that just make the wheels start turning to start to develop a philosophy even at a young age of what made a good golf course?
It's super helpful to really, in any industry, to start at the very bottom, very, very bottom, even if it's, the carrying a weed eater for 10 hours straight on the maintenance crew and just hitting creeks and, doing trees and all that stuff. And then also, because you just kind of get a feel for how it's actually, maybe it's better to change the diapers before you make the baby, right? And
so sure.
So that was super helpful. No doubt, and still very helpful, and still have contacts from those days that have been helpful. And then caddying, what I enjoyed most about that is, I could caddy for a 20 handicap elderly person. I could caddy for a kid at the time my age who was really good, or everything in between. And so you kind of get a broad perspective on how people actually play the game. And you also get a chance to learn how to speak and when's the right time to not speak and when's the right time to offer a club suggestion or to just kind of give them the bag and let them decide. I was also very fortunate to get to caddy in a major championship at the Senior PGA at Southern Hills for Frank Licklider. So that was an interesting phone call that week. Phil Mickelson won the PGA Championship at Kiowa, I believe it was, and just kind of shocked the world. No one thought that was going to happen. And he was 50 or had just turned 50 and was in the Senior PGA field at Southern Hills. But after he won that, he withdrew. And so I got a phone call like basically the Tuesday of. And so I rearranged some meetings and made that happen. So caddying's great for a lot of reasons. I think every architect should at least do it for a season, for every aspiring architect, because it really gives you a full spectrum of how people actually navigate around the golf course and how they think, not just how you think.
Well, with your interest in Scotland, when I think about courses over there that influence my love of architecture, thinking of architecture, I think about Muirfield's routing. I think about the contouring around the greens at St. Andrews, the diabolical fun at Cruising Bay and Prestwick. What are the courses in Scotland that most interest you?
Yeah.
Or influenced you?
I mean, you named some pretty great ones. My favorite, and like I'm not supposed to have favorites, right? But my favorite you named was Cruden Bay. What a really cool site. You know, your first hole plays toward the castle that inspired Dracula, right? I mean, like, as far as a sense of place, it's second to none. And then a pretty challenging site, and just creatively route this par threes around that tight nook is pretty neat. Murfield, iconic. Now, I'm actually not huge on the external 9 and then an internal 9. You know, I don't. Hopefully that's not too controversial to my friends there, but like, it's just not my preferred choice when it comes to routing a golf course. But not to say it doesn't work great there. And then the St. Andrews is great, but a place that I was sitting in a room of 60 of my peers, which is essentially all of them, giving a presentation about my trip in Scotland. And I asked them, had anyone heard of this place called Cove C, by a sign of hands? And no one had raised their hand. No one raised their hand. No one knew of this place.
What's that?
And it wasn't even on my itinerary. A man runs it named Andy, and it wasn't on my itinerary. And like I said, I asked a room full of my peers, had anyone heard of this place during my presentation, and no one raised their hand. So it's totally an unknown, and it wasn't even on my itinerary. I was driving between a few iconic places. I think I was driving between Royal Dornoch and Nairn, and it was starting to get late. I wasn't going to get to Nairn. I was trying to see 60 courses in basically 25 days. So it was basically just like I invented a diet basically where I could eat whatever I wanted in the evenings, and then I would just basically walk 8 miles a day. But I wasn't going to get to Nairn quick enough before sunset, and I was just driving, and there was a sign that I forgot exactly what the sign said. It may have just said like 9-hole golf course or something. And I was like, you know what? Why not? And I just kind of pull off, and you kind of go up this hill, and then you crest it, and it's just like, bam, there's like this little 9-hole paradise on the other side of these hills, right on the ocean, right on some dunescape, and big old rock outcrops like you wouldn't believe. And Andy was there, and he like lives in like a trailer on site. It's his personal property. I'm pretty sure it's like doesn't have electricity, and he like burns wood in the winter. Like true like golf architecture is like wise surfer guy, old surfer bum guy. That's Andy at Cove C, is like this just like wise man that is like, I don't know, tapped into another vein. And he gave me a whole tour of the property, and like by the end of it, he was talking to me about the Dalai Lama and like Far Eastern philosophy. So it was a real interesting guy. And so that's the one that sticks with me. And what's kind of neat is my partner, Tom Coyne, who is well-traveled, of course. And he developed a course in New York, Sullivan County, or redeveloped it. And they've become sister clubs, which is also, the little 9-hole sister club relationship there on the other side of the planet. Yeah, the trip to Scotland was really special, and really grateful just to have the association with that with the World 100 club that sent me over there. Really impressive people, and a club that I'm very thrilled to attend their meeting and meet those folks.
Yeah, Cove C is a really cool place. I found out about it on a trip up to the Highlands. We were playing Castle Stewart, Nairn, Brora, and Dornoch, and we had just played Cruden Bay and Aberdeen. And our caddies at Castle Stewart, I was asking them where they play. And they said, oh, we play this great little 9-holer called Covesea, and you got to check it out. And so it was just in my head. And so on my next trip to Scotland, I went to Covesea Links, and you're right, it's special. And it's those ones that really stand out that are on zero itineraries.
Right.
People who know so much about this don't know about it. And that's why it's important to talk to your caddies, because they oftentimes know the best pub in the area to get a pint, and they know the best little hidden gem golf courses to play because they're on a budget. They're not over there paying, 300, 400, 500 pounds a round. They're going to where they want to play. I want to talk briefly about your firm. I had the pleasure of playing 18 holes with Steve Smyers.
Oh, wow.
2 years ago at Old Memorial, which he designed.
Yeah.
I played it with Steve Smyers and David Bannister. And it was just a blast playing 18 holes with Steve, the guy that designed the course, and asking him some questions. So I'm going to ask you one of the questions I asked him. I referenced that I had read Donald Ross, and Ross said that the first thing he looked at when he walked on a new property was where he wanted to put the clubhouse and the entry road. And then he determined the routing out and back to it. What is the first thing on a new property that you would look for? Fazio looks for key, features out on the course and routes his way to it. Doak uses par threes as a bridge between his fours and fives. Harry Colt famously would find his par threes first. What are you looking at on a new property? Of where do you start? What's the first decision?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm glad you got to play with Steve. He's like my best friend. And not too long ago, he shot like 4 under his age, so he can definitely still get it around. So as far as like initial steps on designing a new course, it's really a little bit less at the very early stages. For me, at least, it's less process driven. It's more intuitive and almost not even thinking about golf, almost, where you're just walking around the property and just discovering the property. And, sometimes it takes a full day of just that. And then maybe on that first day, you see a great golf hole where you're like, okay, there's no way that's not going to be on this routing. And maybe that becomes your anchor. And that certainly does not need to be the clubhouse location, and certainly doesn't need to be the 18th or first hole. The example I can think of right now is the 3rd hole at Lazy J in South Dakota. That was the first hole we discovered out there, where it was like, okay, this for sure has to be an unbelievable par 4. It's already right here. And so then you go find, as many other golf holes as you can, and you have the trace paper, which is see-through paper that you can lay on top of base maps, and you can put numerous layers of that on each other, and then you kind of go through that process of subtraction. Then you come up with all your big ideas, all of your ideas, and then you can't have all of them. If you try to have all of them, you end up with something that's overdone and maybe doesn't tie together perfectly. So you start subtracting. How can I subtract more? Okay, subtract more, and then you get to 18 holes really, really fast. That's something that I think less people realize, and something that consistently surprises me is how quickly you can get to 18 holes. So I don't know if that really answers your question, other than just saying it's a little bit more organic on my approach, at least day one, and then it kind of just starts to reveal itself over time.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds, I don't think there is a right answer, because every architect I've asked that question to has a slight variation, but a lot of it, one of the best answers I've heard, a good friend of mine was one of the co-founders of Colorado Golf Club, and they had multiple firms interview to build Colorado Golf Club, which I think is a wonderful course. And some of them just literally sent their renderings and drawings and hadn't even walked the property, and they had big fancy glossy presentations. But Bill Core told the committee, guys, I can't tell you what I'm going to do until I walk it.
Yeah.
And he and Ben and my friend spent 8 or 9 hours just out walking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of acres. And it was it was interesting hearing all of their different philosophies.
Well, and also every site is different. So every process is different. And to me, and I've said this a number of times, it's kind of my main go-to is, but I think principally the number one thing in golf is what makes the game the greatest game, objectively, is that the playing field's not defined. It's one of the very few sports that doesn't have a defined playing field. And to me, that's principally what makes the game great. It's what encourages travel, and what encourages you to meet new people, right? And so since every site is different, we have a project, like I said, in South Dakota where 20,000 acres, go find 18 holes, not a house on site. We also have a client in Colorado, as you mentioned, where our green space envelope is 85 acres. So that process is dramatically different on both. One, on the 85 acre one, largely we're focusing on safety, right? And how do we make this maximizing the site from a almost a two-dimensional way. On the large scale site, you're trying to just create your best journey. So two totally different processes.
How much of the process, whether it's a new build or you're coming in to do a renovation or restoration, you're dealing with either a developer, owner, or you're dealing with a greens committee and board of trustees. Do you find yourself often having to do some sort of pushback? Like, are they being overly prescriptive and you're trying to make them happy? Or you say, hey, look, we don't think this can work. We've got a better idea. And then kind of, not fight for, but push for your position, because let's face it, there can be a lot of idiots on greens committees. Like, I'm a member at multiple clubs. We've got some guys who are just terrific and know their shit. And we've got other guys who just wanted to be on a committee or lead something and think they have great opinions and their ideas suck. So how do you deal with the interaction of a developer or greens committee that have varying levels of knowledge and common sense?
Yeah, no, I mean, every club is different. Every developer is different. Everyone who's on a country club greens committee, though, is presumably relatively accomplished in their own field, right? So, it's not like you're dealing with incompetent people. But yeah, sometimes there's opinions that are shared that we don't align with, but we try to just express ourselves in the most sincere way. Also, we're very fortunate to be in a place where we're pretty much booked up for the next couple of years, and we can be a little bit more, I guess, selective in how we work and who we work with, and that's been a true blessing. And typically people who share opinions are people who just have a passion for it, right? And we have kind of a saying, because we're a 3-person design firm, right? We're not just one person's ideas. And we have a saying, and we say it to our clients too, is the best idea wins. And so we have designs where, I'm not, one of the best ideas may have come directly from the client, right? It may have come from Tom and his saying, at Lazy J after the third hole, let's go west to not east, right? Or I'm sorry, let's go east to not west. And that's, makes the front 9 routing. So, I mean, it's just the best idea wins. And if everyone can accept that, then you're always going to have success. But yeah, I mean, there are people who they just want their idea, and those are folks that maybe are best to be avoided.
Well, can we switch gears here a little bit? You have a very unique firm. We had some very unique business partners.
Yes.
I'm personally a huge fan of Tom Coyne's writing. A Course Called Ireland, Paper Tiger are two of my favorite books. I read the Golfer's Journal religiously when it comes out. How did you get into business with Steve Smyers and Tom Coyne, and how is this firm? How long have you guys been in business together, and what are some of your big projects that you're working on now?
Sure. Yeah, so I guess I started this firm, which was originally just Colton Craig Design, in February of 19. So I'm coming right up on 7-year birthday here in about a month, here in about 25 days. Very quickly, you'll like this. It kind of ties it all together. I knew Tom was writing his Course Called America book. I caddied for Tom during that whenever he came through Southern Hills.
Oh, no kidding. That's great.
And kind of by the 17th hole, we had kicked around the idea of you have all this travel and kind of notoriety. I was 25 when I started my business, right? And I didn't grow up in the golf world. So there's really I wasn't in a position to, I wasn't on super fertile ground, right? Just from my initial point. But so Tom and I had a great conversation that evening on his drive to Arkansas. I think we talked on the phone for 2 hours, and I don't know, we just really kind of kicked off a friendship and decided, and I personally don't like social media, and he's excellent on it, right? And has a huge presence on it. For good or for worse, it's kind of an important part of the business nowadays.
Yep.
And it gave me an opportunity to fully go off social media. I found it to be a little bit crippling to my creativity, almost like overly stimulated, overly inspired.
Interesting.
And so I now find inspiration from actually traveling to places or reading books or those types of things, or interacting with cross-discipline peers, interacting with, artists and filmmakers, vertical architects. Those are the kind of things that help broaden my horizons. So anyway, so it's a very complimentary relationship, me and Tom, and amazingly, did not plan this at all. He became a client and he bought a golf course in New York, Sullivan County.
It's on my bucket list. I got to get up there and play that.
Yeah, it'd be great. Let me know when you do. And his latest book, of course, called Home, which is coming out here in just a few months, is about the whole process. So that's been a unbelievably. I mean, I wouldn't trade places with anyone. I have the best business partners in the world, and very grateful for that. And then Steve is someone that we just always kind of cross paths at industry events. Kind of always ended up at the cocktail hour chatting, and he's, I think, 40 years my senior, but he's like my best friend, and we talk on the phone multiple times a day. And he does really big, very impressive projects for the best developers in the world. And he got a phone call about a project in Indiana, in Bloomington, Indiana. And it was a little bit of a smaller redesign project for his portfolio, but something that like Tom and I would be like super excited about, right? And so he asked if we wanted to collaborate on that project at Bloomington Country Club. After the interview process, we were hired, and that whole process, master planning all the way through selecting a builder to building it out, and we're in grow-in right now, and we have a little bit more cart path work to do in the spring, and we're going to open this summer. But that process went so great that we just kind of decided, why don't we just merge our firms? So Craig and Coyne then became Smyers, Craig and Coyne, and we have and we really love Steve and appreciate Steve, and we have Smyers, Craig and Coyne will be the name in 50 years when I'm still doing this thing. So definitely grateful for his mentorship, and he's someone that I have a very special place in my heart for. So yeah, between those two guys, it works out really great. We're all three in different generations, right? Got a baby boomer, got a Gen Xer, and I'm a millennial. So that's nice. And then we're in different parts of the country. You got Tom in Philadelphia, Steve in Tampa Bay, and I'm here in Oklahoma City. So it's you couldn't draw it up any better, really.
So
I want one more follow up on Tom real quick.
Sure.
When Rob and I went to Ireland last year. Well, no, it was September of 24. We went to Ireland. So the month before the trip, like reading A Course Called Ireland made that trip come so much more alive. And I appreciated it so much more because I read Tom's book. He has this ability with words to put you in that situation. Like when you're reading Paper Tiger, you feel the frustration that he's going through trying to become a professional golfer. So does his mastery of words and the creativity that he has to write books, how does that shine through when he's coming to the table with design concepts for golf courses?
Yeah, that's a high level question, but like I said, the cross disciplines is what is really my oxygen these days. Tom has never read one of his books.
Wow.
And I was with him in South Carolina eating at a Mexican restaurant, and I asked him, how would you describe your style of writing? Because it's a very unique voice. He has a very unique voice, in my opinion. And his response was, I try not to think about it. So, by no means am I comparing ourselves to Elton John, but, he's a very, very much known to be the creator of his music, right? The writer of the music, all of that, the lyrics, everything. And I forgot who asked him, but it was, when do you know you're done with a song? And he said, when I don't absolutely despise it. So I think every artisan is, slightly tortured. So how I think just his ability to, if I were to describe Tom's writing though, I would describe it as almost like reality TV meets writing.
Yeah.
It almost feels like a personal journal you're looking into. It is sort of how I interpret it, and sort of the approach that Tom and I talk about when it talks about style is the word we kind of settled on was folk style, and so maybe prioritizing the useful over the overly decorative. I feel like we currently are in a state of architecture, golf architecture, where everything's like hyper realistic and so maybe overly naturalized in a way. So, Tom likes to kind of think about things on first principles, more practical, so maybe slightly calmer. I think something we've talked about before is not every hole has to be a guitar solo. It's okay to have some of the old, that's how you get rhythm. That's how you get rhythm on a golf routing, right? Not every hole has to just absolutely blow you away. The 18th hole at the old course at St. Andrews is the absolute definition of simple elegance, right? I mean, on these new builds that are highly celebrated right now, you don't see a whole lot of the 18th at St. Andrews there, right? Yeah. It's almost like every moment has to be an Instagram moment. And so anyways, I can go on a weird soapbox about that and compare it to fine art, but a lot of people think we're in the Renaissance or the second golden age, right, of golf architecture right now. And I think that's definitely accurate. But what's interesting is if you go look at the history of the artisans of the Renaissance, is toward the end of the high Renaissance, the younger artisans had a crisis because like everything that could be done had been done. And so that's when they started inventing the Baroque and the mannerism style of the elongated limbs and indulging in the bizarre and all these kind of a little bit outside of reality concepts that are just like more sensationalized. And I feel like we're kind of there a little bit. And so we like to try to dial it back and maybe go back to very first principles that we were talking about earlier, like in Scotland.
I had a really good chat with Steve Smyers on these topics as well. And I don't really think of Steve as a minimalist per se. I mean, I'm used to Isleworth. He designed Isleworth where Tiger Woods lived. Old Memorial, obviously. I've played a number of his courses in Florida. And one of the things that Steve mentioned was that, something I agree with, having now played pretty much everything, is everything's starting to look and feel alike. And he was thinking that everything doesn't have to be minimal. Everything doesn't have to fit a rubric. And sometimes it's okay to push earth and build and move. So within your firm, do you have different philosophies? And I'm assuming that's healthy. How do you deal with those?
No, absolutely. Yeah, not every project has to be the exact same. Exactly right. And Steve is a champion golfer. Played golf his whole life. I was an NCAA champion at the University of Florida. So like we are a little bit of we have very different kind of introductions to this industry, but we like to celebrate that. If you have a business partner that's the exact same, has the exact same mindset as you, then you're kind of just in an echo chamber. So yeah, we have conversations on a daily basis about what you just kind of described, and it kind of goes back to that best idea wins. Yeah, I mean, minimalism is a little bit of a maybe slightly abused term these days. And so, I probably wouldn't describe us as minimalist, but just like kind of practical. Yeah, we really try to look at things practical. Most design is practical. Steve loves to do championship designs, right? It's important to have great championship designs. It's also important to have, accessible, fun designs. So every course is different, and that's a good thing. And that's why I'm a little bit of an anti-template hole guy, because to me that's the slippery slope of standardization of design. So
yeah, without some sort of freedom and flexibility, if everybody were focusing on minimalism, and a lot of these new top clubs are great, but they feel and look alike, a Hoopy Match Club, Pre-Farm, Broom's Edge, Old Barnwell, I like all of them in their own way, but they all kind of are running the same model, the same feel, the same look and aesthetic. And it's great. And I prefer it to sort of these overbuilt maximalism.
Right.
But I'm starting to get to the point where I want to see something different than what I'm seeing all the time. You know, by today's standards, you wouldn't have a peat dye. You wouldn't get a Harbor Town. You wouldn't get a TPC Sawgrass. And I'm not advocating for a total return to that because it's expensive and it's difficult. But I do want to see some people kind of break the mold a little bit, keeping those golden age principles, but not being afraid to be daring. And, you know, I think you're seeing a little bit of that with some of the younger guys coming up, you know, Tyler Ray, OCM, Brian Schneider. But even in their designs, I'm starting to see, you know, the opposite of what you were just advocating, that not every single hole has to have crazy greens and overbuilt bunkers. Like sometimes there's some like peaceful simplicity that you'll see at a Crystal Downs or you'll see at some of the older places. So how do you find your voice? Like, because at the end of the day, we all sort of have an aesthetic. We all sort of have some sort of philosophy. So how are you developing your voice?
I'm going to kind of go back to what Tom says. I try not to think about it. And I try not to ingest all of my peers' work in real time in a way that now they're influencing me, right? I'd rather my own personal thoughts influence me than the other way around. And, you know, it's interesting you make that comment. Now, you know, things are in style because they're good, right? So it's not like those are bad golf courses by any means. And I think there's some variety in there and then as well. They're certainly not formulaic by any means. And those guys that you named are friends and do great work. But what's interesting is if you go look at, you know, 100 years ago, the golden age of when golf was really being developed in this country at a rapid pace, and you had, you know, the 6 to 8 kind of iconic designers of the time, which now we have probably 60 to 80, right? But when there was just them, and the only way they communicated with each other was if they actually went and saw each other's work, or they wrote each other, or read each other's books or pamphlets. There was never a more wider range and style than during the Golden Age. The era that's the most celebrated had the most diversity of style between Mackenzie and McDonald and Tillinghast and Donald Ross. Huge ranges of style, right? Because they weren't influencing each other in real time. So just the human brain's not meant for that. So it's only natural that if we're constantly giving each other inspiration all the time, that you're gonna start influencing each other. And then you kind of do become a little bit of there becomes a preferred style and maybe even a commercialized style. So no, interesting questions. I wasn't prepared for all these hard questions, guys. You're making me think about things that I hadn't thought about in a while.
Well, I've got one more quick one.
Sure.
Actually, if you were building, you got a great piece of land that you just bought, and you could hire any architect from any era, living or dead, besides yourself and your team. Who are you hiring to build Colton Craig Golf Club, and why?
My Augusta National, if I was Bobby Jones, is that basically the question?
Yeah. Colton Craig Golf Club.
Okay. Probably, I mean, the obvious answer for me, being from Oklahoma, is Perry Maxwell, right? You know, since it can't be my group, it can't be Steve. So maybe from that older, still living generation, it's hard not to say Bill Core just because of his personality. And I've had the privilege of being around him and his partner. And they're just kind of special people, right? Just people you just want to be around. So, you know, I was being polled the other day about what do you look for when selecting a golf course builder, and it was, you know, like budget or cost and time and previous work experience, etc. And then there was like a little section for you to add your own little part. And my answer was just, who do you want to have a beer with at the end of the day? Because it's so important to just like and be on the same page and just see eye to eye with the people you work with. So of that older generation, probably those guys. And so yeah, those are probably my answers: Perry Maxwell and Bill Core. Ironically, I think
Choices.
Sand Hills was inspired by Prairie Dunes. So there you go. And Sand Hills likely was a source of inspiration for Mike Kaiser, who is a founding member, and he went on and did Abandoned Dunes and everything that's kind of spurred from that. So you could make an argument that 1995 Sand Hills project is really the initial catalyst of, you know, what people are calling the Renaissance or the second golden age of our design field. So those are probably my answers. Probably pretty uncontroversial and like run of the mill. You probably get a lot of people who give a similar answer to that. But yeah, that's what I'm sticking with.
I got a real quick one before Matt hops in. Better golf hole in your region, the second hole at Southern Hills or the 8th hole par 4 at Prairie Dunes?
I don't know. I don't know. You know, what Gil did with the second hole at Southern Hills is really neat, kind of reestablishing the left side that had been lost over the years. I don't know. I might, just because the second hole at Southern Hills is actually pretty flat. It's actually a pretty flat golf hole. I might have to say the 8th just because of the third dimension aspect. Those fairway contours on the 8th hole at Prairie Dunes are probably as good as it gets. Yeah. Probably, I guess I would say the 8th hole then because of the third.
Yeah, I mean, the 8th at Prairie Dunes is more dramatic. The thing I love about 2 at Southern Hills is I think that tree right along the creek up the left side really makes, just the visual of sort of framing otherwise a pretty wide, flat golf hole. But what surprisingly makes that hole is that green complex, because it looks really big, but it plays really small. And what's unique about that green is it's very rare to have a longish par 4 with such an undulating green too. It's sort of like, oh, you're coming in here from a long way. And oh, by the way, we're also going to like stick you on the green too. So I thought it was a great hole. And that really stood out to me on a recent trip to Southern Hills as being a special hole, just the way 8 did at Prairie Dunes. So as a Perry Maxwell guy, I was just curious what your thoughts were on this.
The first 3 holes at Southern Hills are probably the hardest 3-hole stretch he did. Maybe.
I started triple-double on Saturday.
Yeah.
So, I can go.
Exactly.
And I bombed the drive on both holes and just made a mess of chipping and putting and putted one off the green. And it's intense. You have to be on your game all times. Like, you can't let up focus anywhere at Southern Hills, but especially those first 3 holes, I think. The greens are so severe.
In Oklahoma, Matt's been gracious enough to host me at Southern Hills and Oak Tree National. I think those are the only 2 I've played in Oklahoma. What are the next 2 I need to play in Oklahoma?
Well, I did a course that I live on now, not far from Oak Tree National, called Graves Golf Club. So you gotta keep the guest out there.
Awesome.
It's a real unique place. 150 members. It's a big driving range and then a 6-hole championship loop. So it's a very non-traditional golf club, but it works.
Can we get Rob to come to Oklahoma this year at some point?
Yeah.
We'll come to Graves. I've actually, before researching, I had no idea that you were involved in that. And it just looks fantastic. Looks like the best practice facility in the state.
It's a first to market concept of like making these practice clubs. The old course at St. Andrews was originally 22 holes, and they eliminated 4 of them because 4 of them were boring. And that's how we came up with 18 holes. The reason why we have 18 holes is because that was the best amount of golf holes on that site. So our idea, I remember telling the client, I was like, I can give you 9 average to good holes, or I can give you 6 great holes. He said, I want 6 great holes. So yeah, you should come check that out. But in all seriousness,
I'd love to.
The courses in Oklahoma you should play. Hopefully, there's one brewing right now that I can't discuss, but that would be definitely a must play if it gets built. Must plays in Oklahoma besides Oak Tree and Southern Hills. I mean, it's hard not to say Dornick Hills. It's where Perry Maxwell's personal farm was. It's where him and his wife and his family are buried. It's an hour and a half north of Dallas, so it's very easy to get to. Very welcoming membership. Not a hard place to get a tee time. So that place is cool for historic reasons, and the site's really great, and the routing's really great. Tom Doak did a restoration there probably 5 years ago now. So that's one. And then the other that you gotta play, there's a random one in Enid that few know about called Oakwood, and it's actually still has absolute original Perry Maxwell greens. And if you want to basically go play greens that the consultant at Augusta National at the time designed and built that are still 100% intact, that's the place you gotta go. So I'm not too far from Hutchinson. If you go to Prairie Dunes, it's probably a 2-hour drive from there, maybe even less.
I never even look at a map when I go to Oklahoma. I get to the airport, I hop in Matt's truck.
He's got a driver.
Yeah, I hop in Matt's truck and I just bullshit with him until we're ready to hit a ball.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. His airports get changed or pick him up in Wichita. It doesn't matter. Whatever we have to do.
Yeah.
what's neat about Oklahoma is there's 50 golf courses that still exist that are Perry Maxwell designs. 25 of them are in Oklahoma, and 20 of those are small town country clubs. A lot of the small towns here in Oklahoma, they have a Perry Maxwell golf course. Really, really kind of neat. It's a neat golf state for a lot of reasons. Really successful collegiate programs at OU and OSU. Obviously, their university courses are pretty highly celebrated. So yeah, highly underrated golf state. Really, really is.
We might need to edit this out, but I'm trying to pitch Rob on doing our Golf and Politics Cup at Karsten this year.
Yeah.
So we'll see if we can talk
That'd be cool.
about that. Maybe we can work that out. But we got to ask one political question before we get into a quick shotgun 9. We have other design questions, so we absolutely have to have Rob come to Oklahoma. We'll go to Graves. We'll ask the other questions we didn't get to today in the interest of time. But one political question, and it deals with access for public golf. And Donald Trump made the news for a lot of things recently, but one thing related to golf is the canceling of the lease with the National Links Trust. And Rob and I have our opinions. I want to hear what you have to say, but ultimately, if you have anything specific opinion on that, but also bigger than that, just how important you think it is for local governments, state governments, the federal government to create access for good public golf for people that can't afford to play at nice clubs.
Yeah, the original green spaces in America were college campuses and cemeteries, and those were kind of recognized as benefits to the community. Those kind of created green spaces kind of prior to the modern zoning that we see today. In a lot of instances, the municipal golf courses existed before the city park system. So, municipal golf came to existence, I believe, right at the turn of the century in New York. And then it became wildly popular. Francis Ouimet won the U.S. Open in 1913, and it just really took off like wildfire. It was profitable for the cities, too. So, made a lot of sense. And the reason why, is especially when 1920 came around, and here's you want to talk about politics influencing development of golf. No bigger example than I can't think of the amendment, but the prohibition of alcohol, 1920, is a huge driver in private club development in America, and why the European model is so different than the American model. Privacy is what drove design, whereas back in Scotland, the land was not fertile, but sandy and great for golf, right? The land drove the design. When it came over to America, it was almost like, in a weird way, like privacy and politics and policy drove the demand. And then, of course, in the 90s, kind of post-World War II, urban sprawl, real estate drove it. And it's not until really recently where it's like developers are not caring as much about location, but where's the best land. So long-winded way of saying it's important because of the way early American golf was developed to have, these affordable options, and largely the cities are the keepers of that, right? It would be very hard for a private developer to have an affordable golf course and still meet the requirements to even maintain it. Right now, hopefully we can get to a place over time where we can really drive down the price of maintenance. We're developing all these great grasses and we're coming up with all this great equipment. At some point, the price needs to start going down on this innovation instead of continuing, okay, we have all this great equipment, we have all this great grasses. Now let's just, how can we push the envelope even harder to have the best possible conditions? So yeah, the municipal golf is extremely important to maintaining that affordable option, and it's also just a part of the American history. And a lot of towns felt like they were officially a city once they had a golf course. That was kind of the marker of when you graduate from being a town to a city. So yeah, my heart goes out to Will Smith and his team. I know they've worked really hard at the National Links Trust, and sometimes governments, all the time, as you guys know, governments change, and you might. We're currently working with a number of governments right now ourselves, and one new mayor or one new administration away from maybe this golf course project doesn't seem like a great idea anymore. So that's just the nature.
We appreciate this. We had Nick Sidorkis on the program, and I asked Nick, I said, I love my office is in Oklahoma City, but I live in Tulsa. I love Tulsa. I think it's a great city, great place to live.
It really
I
is.
said, but let's be honest, the public golf, because this is right after he got the contract to do the city courses in Tulsa. I said, the public golf in Oklahoma City is tremendously better than the public golf in Tulsa. I said, what needs to change in Tulsa? Because you need to elect a mayor like Mick Cornett. It's simple. Mick
Yeah.
Cornett understood the importance of public golf. And there's a lot of truth in that. And Rob's probably sitting there all happy that there's something I disagree with President Trump on, but I
This
don't
is
know.
one
I've
thing. This is one thing for the record. It's been 2 years, and this is one thing.
So I was, if you get, whenever the ballroom was being built and the East Wing was being demoed and they used the golf course as the berry pit,
Yeah.
I was actually out at dinner with one of the National Links Trust guys as that kind of whole storyline was going. And I told him, hey, you guys need to build a putting course and call it the ballroom.
No, I mean, it goes to show what he thinks about municipal golf when he literally took the scraps from the East Wing and dumped it on East Potomac Park golf course. And it's just sitting there in a pile. And you're like, my gosh, like those are courses that in my college years and when I was working on Capitol Hill and not making a lot of money, I went to East Potomac Park and Haynes Point constantly. It's where I met some of my best golf buddies. It's where I practice. It's where I take people that are just learning and want some tips. And we have no shortage in this country of $400 resort courses
Right.
and private clubs that cost six figures to join. I just think that they're national parks. Like that's what people miss on this debate is that East Potomac Park isn't just some primo piece of land up for sale. It's a national park. That's why the Park Service is in charge of it. And I don't dispute that the president has the political ability and authority to tell the Park Service what to do. I mean, saying that these guys are in default of their lease is a major stretch, bearing on not true. But these are national parks. They're meant to have the public. They're meant to have bike paths. I know some of the talk that Trump has said in private conversations to mutual friends, he wants to take the course all the way out to the river on every side and get rid of the stupid bike paths and running paths. It's a national park. It's a multi-use facility. Like he wants to have waterfalls and creeks and fountains. It's at sea level. He'd be going underneath the water table. Like there's a place for golf course construction like that. And it's called Trump International Golf Club in Florida. That's perfect there. People know what they're getting. So for me,
Sense of place.
There are a number of things like, look, I have no doubt that Donald Trump can develop a beautiful green site that's perfectly manicured. But I really think he could be a champion here and get a win on both sides and go. And I told Will this myself, and I think so highly of Will Smith and Mike McCartan and those guys. There's a way for everybody to get a win here. Like, let Donald Trump help make the money happen, help get to the fundraising goal fast. Hell, I don't even care if you let him name it after himself and build a statue of himself on the course. Like, if there's one thing he can do, it's find money really fast and get shovels in the ground and get things done. Like, I don't dispute that. So,
Maybe
but
that's not on the table. I don't know.
But keep the it's off the table now, but keep the architects they have in place and the plans they have in place and just help them hit their fundraising goal and name it after yourself. Like that's what he really cares about. Like at the end of the day, when you put your name on somebody else's memorial, like the Kennedy Center, and you want to put and you want to take over the golf courses, I don't think he cares whether it's a par 4 or par 5. He wants it to be named after himself. So let him have his ego win, but keep Doak and Hands and McCartan and Smith in place and keep the overall vibe of like, this is municipal golf open for the public, win-win all the way around. But it doesn't seem like he's open to that idea. So, I mean, that's my 2 cents. I'm passionate about it.
Well, I am too. And this is an area where Rob and I probably agree. And I have a lot of thoughts, but I'm going to hold them because we are going to we're trying right now behind the scenes to get a episode with some people that are very knowledgeable on this issue and talk about it. But I want to finish up here with what we call the Shotgun 9 very fast questions. Don't overthink it. They're fun questions. Rob and I'll just take turns lobbing questions at you. I'll start with an easy one. What's more frustrating to you, golf or politics?
Probably golf. The game of golf. The game of golf.
Yeah. Yeah. The game of golf. It's very frustrating.
Yeah, I don't verbally assault myself when I'm watching politics.
That's good.
Do you learn more about a course you're visiting by just walking it or by playing it?
Yeah, I mean, kind of maybe walking and playing it, right? Not being in a cart. It's very important to walk, for sure. And yeah, there's definitely an argument to be made that you learn more about a golf course when you're actually just observing it and not focused on your game, where you constantly have your head on a swivel, instead of your head down on the ball. So kind of both, I guess.
If you were the supreme ruler of the world for one day and you could either change one law or one rule in golf, what would it be?
I'm gonna have to pass on that one and come back to it.
Okay.
What is one course you have not played that you would most like to play anywhere in the world?
That I have not played that I'd most like to play. I have not played Shinnecock yet. I'd love to play Shinnecock. Maybe Maidstone. Maidstone might be. Some of those on Long Island, yeah.
All right. In 15 seconds or less, what makes Southern Hills Country Club so special?
It's a true country club. And I don't know if there's another club in the country that has community down like Southern Hills does.
Earlier we talked about, favorite architects. Now we're going to talk about favorite types of courses. If you had a choice between getting an RV and spending a month playing London Heathland courses like Sunningdale and Swinley Forest and Walton Heath and going around London, or playing links courses in Scotland or Ireland, what would your choice be?
Further north, Scotland and Ireland. I like the smaller town villages, fishing villages vibes than the big city inland. And I just like the ocean.
If you could redesign any famous golf hole, what would it be and why?
Here in Oklahoma City, there's the, this might be a little controversial, but the Lake Hefner North course was a really cool Perry Maxwell design. You could make an argument that it is a link style course right there on this huge lake. Perry Maxwell actually owned the land and deeded it to the city in his will. So probably one of the golf holes on that property.
In a similar vein, if you could pick any golf course, and this could be a small town personal choice where you grew up, it could be Pebble Beach, that you would most like to renovate or restore.
Most like to renovate or restore.
Is this a place that you think has great bones and has just either been mishandled in the past, made bad changes, or is just a place that's, hasn't really been fixed up in a while and could use a good polish?
For sure. Yeah. I think a very one that I think about, maybe a couple times a month is Twin Hills here in Oklahoma City. The host of the 1935 PGA Championship, Perry Maxwell original design. The old photos there are absolutely iconic. It's a really cool club. Probably Twin Hills.
I'll be at Twin Hills tomorrow for a fundraiser.
Will you?
Yeah. Friend of the program, Anthony Moore, has got a fundraiser. Rob knows Anthony. He's been on the program a couple times.
He was texting me last night during the Steelers game. I mean, I'll say this, I was nervous at various points, but Anthony's panties were in a bunch.
Oh yeah, they were. He just got back from Kapalua, by the way. All right, so I've got one more, and then Rob has one more. And Rob will ask you a question we ask every one of our guests. But my last question for you is, of all the projects that you've worked on, what's the number one place that we got to go check out your work?
Most recent is probably Bloomington Country Club. Totally redesigned that. It's in Bloomington, Indiana. College town that's absolutely on fire right now because of their football program. Steve Smyers also has one of his original designs right there with the foul course, the university course. Their Karsten Creek, if you will, is just right across town. So probably Bloomington, Indiana is a really good spot to post up and hang out for a few days if you want to experience some of our stuff.
Sounds good. So the golf and politics question we ask everybody, you have one dream foursome, and it has to include a politician, a professional golfer, and any celebrity alive or dead, all time. Who's in your foursome?
Okay, probably politician. Probably Ben Franklin, if I had to. I recently read his biography, and I just find him to be very interesting. Let's see, famous person?
Yeah,
probably
any celebrity.
Probably Adam Sandler. And then what was the third one? Famous golfer?
Yeah, pro golfer, yeah.
Pro golfer, still living or anytime?
Anytime.
I mean, he wasn't pro, but maybe Bobby Jones or I don't know. I really enjoyed caddying for Frank Licklider. He's a little out there, but I really enjoyed Frank, and he's a little bit of a journeyman, which I admire. Not everyone has to be the star of the show, right? And he took third at the Masters, I think, one time. He's one of the more interesting men I've ever met.
I'll say this: in 80 episodes, that is our first Frank Licklider.
Yes, he's a colorful one. So yeah, that's my foursome. Ben Franklin, Frank Licklider. That's a funny combo right there.
Did you read the Walter Isaacson Ben Franklin book? I forget. I think it was Walter Isaacson. There's also a really good limited series streaming. I forget what it's streaming on, maybe Netflix or something, starring Michael Douglas as Ben Franklin.
Oh, nice.
And it's probably like 8 episodes, but if you love the book, it's totally worth the watch.
For sure. Yeah, I'll look that up tonight.
Well, Colton, thank you for taking the time to be with us. This was a lot of fun. We hope to do it again. And where can our listeners find information about your company?
I still need to go back and do the one law I would change.
Oh yeah, that's right. Good memory.
The one law I would make is or the change in golf rule would be to make the Olympic format Ryder Cup style.
Oh, yeah, that would be great. Okay, Colton, we've done the Shotgun 9, but I would be remiss if I didn't ask you a very important question. What is the best golf shot you've ever hit?
I think this is slightly leading, because there's an obvious answer for me. Went relatively viral. Earlier this summer, was it this summer? Yeah, this summer up at Sullivan County, we were opening the project. It was the 100-year celebration. We totally redesigned the 9-hole course that Tom had acquired with his friend Bill Murray and Jason Kelsey, and so I was playing that opening centennial round with Mr. Murray, and on the 6th hole, which is maybe the most controversial hole, but it's a good par 3. It's a very difficult par 3. I had the fortune of making my first hole in one while playing with Bill, and he gave me a big hug, and I think we opened up the bar tab that night, and it was a good time. Bill wrote me a little short story on it, and signed a poster for me, and we took a photo together. So it was that's
fantastic.
That will never happen to me again.
Was it your first hole in one?
First and only. Yeah.
Wow.
Maybe ever. I almost don't want another hole in one now.
That's incredible.
Might spoil it. But no, it was wild. It was an absolutely, it was one of those things where it's like, that will not happen again to me. Ever. And I don't know. It was really cool. But it was also pretty fleeting. Half a hole later we're still just playing golf.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, in the moment,
it takes some time to calm down after a shot like that too, and the excitement, and get your heart rate under control.
It was a shamble too, so everyone got a hole in one.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's so great.
Anyways, yeah, I mean, you can just look us up online. I think it's scgolfdesign.com, Smyers, Craig, and Coyne. Also, my phone number is readily available on that website and very easy to get a hold of. And just enjoy talking to people about golf architecture and, I guess in this case, politics a little bit. I'm a little bit apolitical, to be honest, so I frankly try to avoid it. Maybe that's a little cowardice, but I don't know. I just, these days, it's too much, I think. It's too hard to keep up with. So
there are days I like to avoid it, but I can't. It's what I do for a living.
It's what you do for a living. Yeah, it's funny. One of my politician friends called me the other day. He was like, Colton, I was listening to a golf podcast, and I wanted to call you and talk about this idea I had because of it. And he was like, do you ever listen to this podcast? I said, I don't listen to golf podcasts. He was, that's funny. I don't listen to political podcasts.
Well, I appreciate everybody who listens. Check us out anywhere that you get content. We're on Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Please subscribe. It helps us if you subscribe, and go to our website at golfandpolitics.com and sign up for our email newsletter. Colton, thanks again. And thanks for everyone who listens.